Would you like to be able to find campsites that are beautiful, remote, and absolutely free? Once I learned the technique that I'm about to show you, I found an endless supply of campsites that were away from the bustling crowds that you'd find in the national parks. Ones where you might not see anybody for days upon days because there's simply no one around for miles and miles. You can also use this same technique to find a campground that's outside of the boundary of a national park. Camp there without having to be elbow to elbow with your neighbors and worrying about all the baggage that comes along with that, and without having to pay the camping fees. And then it's just a short drive to get back into the national park. So let's talk about how you find these wonderful campsites. Who knows, you may have some similar experiences that I have, where I saw a herd of elk passing right by my tent early one morning. It took 20 minutes for them all to get by. And in another place, I may have heard a Sasquatch. And in another place, I may have seen UFOs. I'll talk some more about those later. But for now, grab your notepad, a pen, start taking notes because we're going to dive right in. Do you do overlanding? If so, how do you find the places to camp? Put it in the comments down below. Incidentally, this video is because somebody asked a question in the comments. That question was, can you talk a little bit about planning your trips, apps, site choices, desired destinations, goals? Excellent question. And somebody else has also asked another question here. Can you make another one about the boxes in the cab? And so we'll do that, but we're going to get through this one first. Okay, let's talk a little bit about my technique for finding these beautiful places to camp that are free. So I begin with GAIA GPS. I've looked at a lot of different apps and a lot of different applications and settled on GAIA GPS. I really do like it. There is a free version and there's a subscription version. The free version is great to download onto your desktop and start practicing and learning with it, but you'll want to use the mobile version, obviously, when you're out in the wild. And you'll also want to make sure that you have the subscription, that you're paying monthly or annually to be able to use it, because that allows you to download the map of the area that you will be in. So you can take an area in a state or the United States and outline the area that you want to download to your phone, and it'll download that map. And then when you're out of cell phone signal and you have absolutely no bars, the GPS chip that's in your phone will allow this app to show you exactly where you are. You can see yourself moving on trails. It is wonderful. And so you'll definitely want to do that. The app, you can go in there and you can start searching, and I'll talk a little bit later about how you find the exact spots that you want to look at. But for now, let's just say that this red flag that you see here is the place that I decided that I want to camp. And you can see that the isolinear bars are very close together, meaning there's a steep rise or drop off there. So this is right on the edge of that. And down at the bottom, you'll see the GPS coordinates in a decimal format. And so it's 48 dot and a string of numbers, comma, a space, minus 114 point and some other numbers. And you can think of those as being the X and the Y coordinates around the Earth as it wraps around, and it'll show you exactly where it is. It's kind of three-dimensional. It's a lot more complicated than that, but basically that's it. It gives you a unique spot on the Earth with just those. Okay, so then we've got those same GPS coordinates now, and what we want to do is to go into Google Earth, and we want to take those GPS coordinates that we found in GAIA GPS and now use them in Google Earth, because Google Earth gives us greater resolution, definition. You can see things more clearly. You can zoom almost down to the fire ring level and tell whether or not there's a fire ring. You can see if there's power lines that are running through there. You can see if there's buildings and other structures that you may not be able to tell in GAIA GPS. Now, the thing to remember about Google Earth is that it requires a cell phone signal, whereas GAIA GPS did not. And if you don't have a cell phone signal or access to the internet, Google Earth will not allow you to search. So it's helpful if you stop somewhere along the line where you do have a cell phone signal and kind of do the search if you want to use Google Earth. So then, this is quite optional. On your cell phone, there's another app that you can get called onX Offroad. And the beauty about onX Offroad is we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to use those same exact GPS coordinates to search for the location that we want to go to. And here it is again. You can see it's on an edge of a cliff there. And you can see where the road comes in, the dotted lines up, the dashed lines up there. And the beauty about this is that if your place that you are potentially going to camp is on a trail that is in or is in onX Offroad, then you can get trail information. You can find out, is that a difficult trail? Is it moderate? Is it easy? What are the obstacles I expect to encounter? Are there other campsites along that path that I could camp in? So there's a wealth of information in there, including, walking trails, getting the weather, doing those various other things that are in there. So that is onX Offroad. And if I like all that I've seen so far and things look good and I decide this is where I want to go, then I'm going to turn to my Garmin Overlander and use those again, those exact same GPS coordinates. Now, I use my Garmin Overlander for navigating on the highways, but the beauty of it is that it also has off-road trail information. And so 90% of the time, it will get me to the spot out there in the wilderness that I want to go to. But as I'm traveling, and especially when I get off the road, I will not only use my Garmin Overlander, but I will be using GAIA GPS and looking at both of those simultaneously. Because sometimes the Garmin Overlander will try to get me a direct route where no trail exists between 2 points. Some strange things. And so I can always go back to GAIA GPS and tell where I'm going and get there. Now, the question is this the only technique? And the answer is no. You don't need to use all of these. Why? Because, well, with Google Earth, we already talked about if you don't have a cell phone signal, and Google Earth's not going to work. So, you don't need it. You really don't. Do you need onX Offroad? Well, no, you don't, but it makes life easier. Do you need the Garmin Overlander, that GPS device? Again, no, you don't. And it is expensive. But what you do need is GAIA GPS. And so if you have GAIA GPS, it will actually guide you and give you directions to the place that you want to go. And it will give you voice directions, although I've never gotten that to work, but I know that it is possible. So you could use that. It is a smaller screen than the Garmin Overlander, but yes, you could just use GAIA GPS if you have a subscription and you've downloaded the area map for the area that you're going into. And incidentally, I downloaded about half of the United States into my cell phone. It does have a lot of memory, but it worked out fine. When you're downloading maps, you don't want to download a lot of detail. So, the satellite stuff I don't download, but just the base maps and those type of things, to see topography, see where fires are, actually current fires are burning, to see public and private land. Those layers I download, and I'll be using them out there on the trails.
Okay, that was just a really brief overview, and I know you probably have some questions, and so we'll try to answer those as we go through the rest of this. Next, I want to take a look at the type of public lands that you can camp on and drive on. There are basically two types. Here, watch this.
I'm using the desktop version or the web version of GAIA GPS. And I thought I would just point out a few things. So as you're traveling and you're looking for a place to camp, you're looking for public lands. And if I was to zoom in over here on the western part of the United States, there are areas that are in green and there are areas that are in yellow. And both of those are public lands. So the yellow is called Bureau of Land Management, BLM. And I once heard somebody describe those lands as lands that nobody else wants because they're barren, desert, dry. There are mountains, but they're basically barren also. The green, on the other hand, is the U.S. Forest Service. And those tend to be mountainous, forested, or grasslands. And so those public lands are areas that you can camp in. And there are rules about how far off the road you can go and those type of things. And you'll want to pay particular attention to those and read about them. But let's zoom in on an area let's just pick this one right here. So this is green over here on the coast. And if I were to click in an area and drop a pin there, over here on the left in the panel, I can see this is National Forest Service. But do you see that it's not all green? There's some lighter green colors in there. And there's some other things. So if I was to click on one of these other areas, I'll just drop a pin right there, I can see that there's some private land here. And I can actually tell who owns that piece of property. So if we zoom in enough, so we'll just click right here. I can see that I have an owner here, two owners. And then if I click over in this square, I'm back into the National Forest. And there is a road ending right there, making it a possible campsite. So you want to pay attention because you may be in a forest, National Forest or BLM, but you might be camping on private property. So, you want to use an app like GAIA GPS that's able to tell you where the public land is and where the private land is. And if it's private land, you'll want to get permission before you travel there and camp on that land. The other thing I wanted to point out, let's zoom back out so we can see things again. All right. Compare the West Coast, the western half of the U.S. actually, to the eastern half. A big difference. There is a ton of public land out west. Out east, not so much. There is some U.S. Forest Service land, but you see very little, if any, BLM out here. So it makes it a lot easier when you're traveling to find places that are out on the west. As I came from southern Florida through here, I had to find and really think about where did I want to end up, because I wanted to be in a national forest so I'd be able to find a place to camp. Well, that's the foundation. Now let's see if we can make it actually work. We'll begin by going into GAIA GPS and looking for camping sites. And after we've identified a couple, then we're going to inspect them using Google Earth and maybe go into OnX. And then lastly, once we've decided where we're headed, we are going to go into our Garmin Overlander and see how to punch those numbers into it. So that's the real key, is just figuring out how do you get the GPS coordinates out of one application into another in a format that's acceptable to that application. Once you have that down and you know for the things to look for potential campsites, it's a breeze. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, let's use a scenario that happens to me just so often. I'll be traveling from one location to a destination for that day, and somewhere along the line I decide, it's getting late. I need to find a place to camp. And I want to allow myself a couple of hours to find that campsite. Why? Because many times you'll head off on a trail thinking, yeah, this is great, I'm headed right to my campsite, just to find out that you can't get there because the road's blocked or somebody's camping there already, and so you don't want to camp there. There's a myriad of reasons why you need to allow yourself a little bit of time. Otherwise, you'll be doing like I have done on occasion, and that's hunting for a place in the dark. And believe me, it's a lot more fun to find it while it's still light out, get everything set up, explore the area a little bit, make something to eat before you have to hit the sack. So in this case, I'm going to use the example of going from Missoula, Montana, to Spokane, Washington. And as I zoom in here, you can see that's Interstate 90. So I'm traveling along the interstate, and somewhere along in between there, I decide, it's getting late. I need to find a place to camp. And so I'm going to pick a place here in Idaho, and I don't know exactly where I am. I'm just zooming in. And as I zoom in, I have the layer here in GAIA GPS, and that's the app that we're looking at right now. I have the layer for the motor vehicle use maps, MVUM, turned on. And that will show me the trails and roads maintained by the U.S. Forest Service. So watch, as I zoom in a little more, voila, they all pop up. And there they are. So what I'm looking for is I'm on Interstate 90, and I have to be able to get off of 90, exit the highway, and get onto one of these trails or get to where the trails start. So I'm looking for ease of access here, so to speak. I would like to find something that intersects with the interstate. So as I zoom in here, I can see Interstate 90, that orange line. And here is a place right here where it looks like I can get off of 90, probably a little tiny town or hole in the wall there, and I can get up into this area up here. What interests me most and what I'm looking for are places where the roads and the trails end. And so hopefully it ends at a camp place where you can camp. A lot of those are hunting campsites where hunters during hunting season will camp. Not all of them, I mean, but a lot of them are. So others are just logging trails. And so they've been out taking down timber and stuff, and the road just ends because they stopped there. So let's look at this. Let's just pick one of these roads. Again, here's the place that I'm coming in, 288. I come up here and I have a choice. I could turn and go up this right branch right here, or go up in these others. So the one I think I'll start with is this one up here because it does have other trails and stuff. I don't want to travel miles and miles and miles through the forest to get to a campsite in this situation because, again, it's going to be getting dark. So I want something that has easy access to the highway, maybe no more than, let's say, 4 miles off-road travel. So let's just see what this one is. Okay, I'm looking at the isolinear bars, and that kind of tells me where the mountains are and flat places. This one goes all the way up here at the base of a mountain, it looks like. So I hold my finger down there for just a second on that spot, and it pops up this dialog box down below. And the first thing I'm going to do is to find out if this is public land or is it private land. So as I scroll down, I see that this is in the Lolo National Forest, beautiful forest. You see where it says USA private land, US? That tells me this is not somebody's land, but it's owned by the United States of America. It's public land. So there is a Saltese Consolidated Mine information there. That's a marker. But it looks good to me. I don't see that somebody owns this land. So I'm going to get this out of the way. Well, actually, I should have kept it open. Let's tap there again, the same spot. And now what I want to do is take the GPS coordinates out of this and go over to Google Earth, paste those GPS coordinates into Google Earth, and look at this spot. So here are the GPS coordinates, and I'm going to put my fingers somewhere on those and just hold it for 2 or 3 seconds. And when I let go, an option to copy the GPS coordinates appears. So, whoops. So we're going to do that again because I messed it up. So we tap for just a second. And then we are going to, incidentally, if you don't get right where you want to be, you can just tap again. But that's close enough. I mean, yeah. So I'm going to hold my finger down on the GPS coordinates for a second, tap the copy option. All right, so now those GPS coordinates are saved in a buffer in the memory of the iPhone. In other words, it's a copy and paste. So we've copied it, and now we're going to switch over to Google Earth and come up here to the search icon, and we are going to paste in those search coordinates or those GPS coordinates that we're going to search on. So there they are. I'm going to tap the search button, and this will zoom us in to that location. Actually, we're still in Montana, aren't we? Okay. So there it is. Nice. Kind of get a view for what's around me as it spins around. You know, in other words, is it mountainous? What is it looking like? It's not real mountainous there. There are some mountains over there. Yeah. Okay, and here's the one that we're kind of close to the base of. So now I'm zooming in, and I can see the trail here. That looks like a fairly nice trail. It gets covered by trees in here. It comes up here, and there is a clearing right here. There's also some clearings up in here, and it may be that you can actually get further up into here. But that is a potential spot. Now, what I'd rather do is to find one that's up on top of a mountain. That would be cool, huh? Because then you could look all around. And so while I'm still in Google Earth, I just kind of take a moment to kind of move around a little bit and just see, is there anything else that I should be interested in? There's potentially a road coming up here, it looks like. There's a creek running through there. All right, well, that is definitely a spot, a potential spot. And it's not terribly far off the interstate. You can see it there. So I think what I will do is say, yeah, I think I like that. So at this point, since I didn't find anything else in this area that I was really interested in, I don't need to copy the GPS locations of a new place that I found. I still have the same place. So I'm going to switch back to GAIA GPS. I'm going to save this, tapping the save button. I'm going to change the waypoints icon to that of a tent, and the color is going to be red. Red meaning, again, that I have not camped there, but it's a potential campsite. I can actually grab it right now and move it a little closer to that line if I wanted to. All right. I can go back here, and I could change the title right next to the symbol. But for now, we're just going to leave it there. I could put some notes in saying, you know, this is not the greatest campsite in the world, but it's doable, whatever I wanted to do. Maybe tell it that it's in Montana. All right, so we're going to hit the save button. All right, so we have saved that right now. And as we zoom out, now, why aren't we seeing that? Well, I've got so many waypoints on my map that it would get confusing if I turned them on. But normally you would see that right there. And we could, if we were to look up here, hit this layers button, and then map overlays, click that, and we could turn on the waypoints. And now, voila. You see that. And there it is. All right. So that was good. We might try to find another place near there. The reason being is that, you know, again, that might not have been a good spot. So if I came down the road a little further and came up this way, there seems to be a number of places where the road ends. In fact, if we came all the way out here, who knows? Let's just try that one. All right. I'm looking down. It is Lolo National Forest Public Land, so we're good there. So let's copy the GPS coordinates by holding my finger down for a few seconds, letting go, and then pressing the copy option that pops up. All right, now switch back over to Google Earth. Hit the little icon there for the hourglass, or the search rather. And we're going to paste those GPS coordinates in there and do a search. And so now we're zooming in on this new location. All right. This is troubling. Those, my friends, look like power lines. They are. See the tower there? So this is something that you do have to be careful of. You don't want to camp in a place that has power lines. And expose yourself to all that EMF coming from those power lines. Alrighty, so I think you get the idea, but let's just take this a step further. So I don't like that, but if I look around, looks like the road comes up this way, connects with this one, and maybe for some reason I think, gee, that right there looks like a cool spot. To me, it actually looks like it's a landslide. But, maybe I want to mark that landslide also as a place I want to visit for some reason. So how do I take the GPS coordinates of this landslide location and put them back into GAIA GPS where I can put a waypoint and save it and give it some description and all that kind of stuff? Because I want to keep everything in GAIA GPS, including photos. There's just a myriad of stuff that you can do. So I tap there on the road right by the place. And down here in the panel that says drop pin, I'm going to hold my finger over the GPS coordinates for about 3 seconds. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try it again until I see location copied to the clipboard. And now we're golden. Now, as long as I'm in Google Earth, the other thing I want to point out, see these 3 little bars right here? Tap on that, come down to where it says settings, and then scroll down until you find latitude, longitude. This determines the formatting of degrees, and by default, mine was set at degrees, minutes, and seconds. To be able to copy back and forth easily between the apps, make sure that you select decimal instead. Okay, so now we've copied that into the buffer, and we want to switch back over to GAIA GPS. There's that spot. But we didn't like that. There was power lines there. And so what we want to try to find is that other rock slide location that we want to visit, maybe take some pictures there. So what we're going to do now is close out this little white panel. And here's the search. If you don't see it, press these 4 little arrows up here, and then you should see it. So tap the search. And for the search bar, I'm going to tap there and then do a long hold, paste, and now I'm going to tap the GPS coordinates below that now appear, and that will take me to that slide location, which is right there. And so, again, I may want to save that, and then I'll want to edit that, change the icon to something that shows like a rock slide. We'll use the skull and crossbones there as a symbol. How's that? And now I want to put, for the title here, I may want to put rock slide. I can choose a folder. If this is Montana, then we pick Montana. I can put some notes in here, all those type of things. What we want to do now is to hit the save button, and it's saved. And so now on my map, I've got those two locations. And that's kind of the process, going back and forth until you find the place that you want. If you have half an hour to spend and you do have good cell phone access or internet access so that you can use Google Earth, spend some time and you can actually find some beautiful places that are up in the mountains where you want to be. My only precaution is that, and I say this because I overestimate all the time, or underestimate, I guess. I'll look at something and I say, oh yeah, there's a great place. I want to go there. And even though it looks like there's a lot of trails to get to it, well, it ends up being like 15 miles out there and the road is rough and you're just never going to make it there. So you end up camping somewhere before you get there. That happens a lot. So as the crow flies, I wonder what the distance is from this rock slide to that potential campsite. Now, there you can see the road. In fact, even better, let's just see roughly how far that is. So what in this case, you just do a long press and it brings this up. And then you press somewhere else along the line and then somewhere else. And we just keep that process up. It's kind of a long press each time. And this guy gets in the way. This is not exact because I'm not actually doing the entire thing, sticking with it. But you can see that that's 2.2 miles. And it depends on how rough that trail is, whether or not you'd want to go on it. That is looks like a fairly good trail road, whereas these dashed lines represent trails and they could be rough. So, okay, I'm going to cancel because I'm not saving a route there. Clear. Okay. So that is how you find places to camp. Essentially, you make sure that your layer is on for the motor vehicle use maps, MVUM. If you're in BLM, then you're just looking at roads that are there that you can see in GAIA GPS and in Google Earth. You will want to make sure that you do a little studying on the differences between camping in BLM and camping in U.S. Forest Service, how far you have to be away from streams and those kind of things, and whether or not areas are closed or open. Go to the website for that forest or that piece of BLM land, the field office, and you can get that kind of information. Okay, as promised at the beginning of this video, I'm going to share with you some of the rather unusual experiences that I've had at some of the places that I found to camp out in the wilderness. So if you notice the smoked glasses, that's the reason I'm wearing them. I may be embarrassed by this. You may not think I'm totally sane, you know. So yeah, maybe I should have worn darker glasses. Anyway, how do you find places to camp? Leave a comment down there. Do you use a particular app or set of apps? Or do you rely on printed maps? The motor vehicle user maps? How do you do it? Let me know. Comments down below. All right, here's the weird stuff. So I have to tell you about an unusual experience that I had here this morning. Last night was my first night here. I got here, I think it was around 7, somewhere in there. It was still light. And as I mentioned before, I talked to the gentleman down here. He took off.
So that left me alone. Camped an uneventful night, and I was running on a lack of sleep, so I slept in late and got up around 8:15, somewhere in there, and got dressed, and then I started to explore just a little bit, and I walked down this way, not very far, and I heard a very loud and distinct knock. Hard wood, hitting hard wood. And it came in the direction that I'm walking. It came from beyond my truck, and maybe about 30 yards up from my truck, up the hill. There is a barbed wire fence there. And, you know, at first I didn't really know what to think about it. It piqued my attention, though, because, you know, I'm alone out here. And about 30 seconds later, I thought I heard, maybe even 15 seconds later, I thought I heard another knock. But this one sounded much fainter. And then I started hearing things thudding against the ground up in that direction. As those stones, you know, were being thrown and thudding into the ground. All of this happened within a period of a minute or so. And at that point, I thought, you know, if somebody or something is trying to scare me off, I got to go back to the truck, and I ain't moving. So I'm about I'm about where I was at that point. There's the truck. So I decided I'm walking back to the truck regardless. So I walked back up to the truck and opened up the ALU-CAB door there in the back and got my cell phone out of the tent and grabbed my keys, and then I walked over, opened up the driver's door, and I started playing music. And I had all 4 doors open, and I cranked up the volume. The only thing that I have on my cell phone is when I bought it, it had U2 on there. And so You're Going to Sleep Like a Baby Tonight was a song that first blared out. And I mean, I cranked up the speakers. So loud that I had to step back from the truck. It was hurting my ears. And I played music for about 20 minutes, blaring like that. Then I turned it down and then eventually turned it off because I want to make sure that I can start the truck battery again, right? And I have not heard anything, not a peep. And I feel quite comfortable. But it was odd. It really was odd and strange. So I'm going to stay here 2 or 3, maybe 4 days. And if anything else like that occurs again, you know, I'll talk about it. It's unfortunate I didn't have a camera with me at the time, my cell phone or the GoPro, or even, I didn't even have my regular camera, the DSLR. But, you know, I'm not sure that I could have captured anything. I didn't see anything. I looked. So just strange, you know. As long as I'm talking about it, you're going to think I'm a kook after telling you these things. But about a month ago or more, when I was in, I think I was in Wyoming, I was in BLM, which is Bureau of Land Management land. It's government property, public property that you can camp on. I was out quite a ways, maybe, I'm guessing, 8 miles out into the middle of nowhere. And it was a beautiful spot, and I could overlook a vast, vast valley with mountain peaks all the way around. I went to bed that night, and I remember somebody asking me, well, can you see the Milky Way? So I was in the tent. It was maybe 11 o'clock at night.
maybe later. And so I thought, well, I'll unzip one of the ALU-CAB Canopy tent windows, peek outside and see if I can see the Milky Way. What do you think I saw? Well, it's not what I expected. I saw lights that seemed to be in the sky as though they were helicopters with big, huge searchlights scanning the ground, apparently, way off in the distance. And they moved from one side of the valley to the other very quickly, very rapidly. At first I thought, well, you know, those might be ATVs or four-wheelers or something that are out in the mountains, and there's two of them that are kind of following each other around, and, you know, who knows what. But there was no sound. I couldn't hear a thing. I mean, it was deadly silent. And the rapidity with which they moved was really surprising. So after watching those for a while, and incidentally, no Milky Way, right? Just a few stars out there. So after watching them for a while, I decided, well, you know, there's nothing I can do. If those are military search planes, if they're unexplained events, whatever they are, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to shut my window, zip it up, hope they don't bother me, and I'm going to sleep. And that's what I did.